Tonight we had a great event as a part of the first annual City Hacks GR Tech Weekend and Hackathon. The forum, GR Michigan, Still the Furniture City, or America's Next Tech Hub, was a great meeting of the minds between some of the foremost innovative thinkers in West Michigan's tech ecosystem, people who lead companies, people who are tech advocates and who lead organizations and are interested in helping to build a very efficient and inclusive tech talent pipeline. The Midwest Tech Project is extremely excited about City Hacks GR Tech Weekend. We have to shout out all of our panelists: Carl Erickson from Atomic Object, Meredith Bronk, CEO of Open Systems Technologies, Mike Morin, CEO of Start Garden, Luis Perez, CEO of Loop Coding Center, and of course, last but not least, we had Mercedes Barragan from Spectrum Health IT. Oh, and of course, my good friend, Schapp from The Factory, from Elevator Up, the man, the myth, the legend. So we're really excited about having all these different people with different opinions talk about West Michigan's tech ecosystem in the industry, the on-ramps, the accessibility, and also, of course, the diversity.
First and foremost, we'd like to thank all of you here tonight for coming out to spend this moment with us. The Midwest Tech Project and Theta Ventures has worked extremely hard for City Hacks Tech Weekend, and we wanted to thank you all for helping to make this possible, especially our lovely panelists here. So please give yourselves a round of applause for coming on out and making this event possible. Before we get going, we cannot move forward without thanking all of our amazing sponsors: Start Garden, Atomic Object, Spectrum Health, Open Systems Technology, Ferris State University, Grand Rapids Community Foundation, Mercantile Bank, GRPS, and Downtown Grand Rapids, Inc. Without them, this whole weekend would not be possible. So we are extremely thankful of their support and continued support of the Midwest Tech Project. So I'm gonna pass it over to my brother in crime, Mr. Jonathan Jelks, to give the most eloquent introduction you may have ever heard in your lives. So let me please give Jonathan Jelks a round of applause, please.
These mics distributed here. So pass that one down to the other end. Yeah, two, so maybe one goes to the other end, Aaron. Aaron loves the mic, I see. He's ready to go already. Ladies and gentlemen, we are so very excited to have you guys join us for the kickoff of the first annual City Hacks GR Tech Weekend and Hackathon. This event is a collaboration between the Midwest Tech Project and Theta Ventures. I don't see Ken here, but Ken Miguel Soprano is the representative of Theta Ventures, and we are really ecstatic to be doing this. For us at the Midwest Tech Project, we view this weekend as an evolution of sorts. People know us for our mentoring program and our work with youth and trying to introduce and expose youth to all the different opportunities within the technology industry. But now we're really excited to move into being known also as an advocacy organization and more of a think tank that is convening people around technology culture. You can't really educate the youth if you're not engaging with parents, if you're not engaging with neighborhood associations and those other entities that are outside the four walls of a school around this wonderful industry. This panel that we've assembled today, it's really spectacular. I don't know how we were able to pull this off. We called in every favor. A lot of these people support us on a daily basis and are contributors to this weekend. They believe in our mission. They believe in the mission, most important, not just our mission, but the mission to make tech more accessible here in the city of Grand Rapids. This is kind of like the dream team. This is a dream team with Michael Jordan, Larry Bird, Magic Johnson, and if Isaiah Thomas, I'm a Detroit Pistons fan, he was supposed to be on the dream team. We're here. That's what we have going on with this panel. Each of let it go. And the water boy, of course. Each of these individuals, their time is so precious, and so for them to be able to spend an evening here at Start Garden to have a conversation like this is it's awesome. So thank you, panelists, for participating in this event. We truly appreciate you guys. Another round of applause for panelists. So I think to kind of kick things off, we want to have each panelist introduce themselves and just a little bit about their work. We don't want to take too much time up because I was elongating things. I was drinking beer in the back. It's my fault that we were getting started late. But we want them to be able to introduce themselves, what they do, where they work, and then we'll get into this conversation, which is going to be a good one. We're asking, is GR Michigan still the furniture city, or is it America's next tech hub? Can it be America's next tech hub? And what needs to happen in order to help that come into fruition? So I think, Carl, you have the mic and you're closest to me, and you were one of our inspirations for the Midwest Tech Project. We heard you at a forum years ago for Rapid Growth Media talking about where are the people of diverse backgrounds, ethnically, women, et cetera, where are they in regards to the tech industry? So as in my neighborhood, we would call you an OG. Not because you're an old guy, but because you are a veteran in the space and you've been having these conversations long before many people were thinking about this. So, I don't know.
Look, yeah.
Thanks, Austin.
Look at it, Carl. It's got a light on right on the face there.
Okay. OG, old guy, stepping up. What does OG really stand for? Jonathan, I think we have a little problem here because not all of us are drinking.
Yes.
And that it would be a lot funnier, probably. You got these guys a beer?
I had a head start.
Okay, I'm Carl Erickson. I'm the CEO and the co-founder of Atomic Object. Atomic Object is a software design and development consultancy. We make beautiful software products, web apps, mobile apps, embedded work for startups to the Fortune 500 and everybody in between. We celebrated our 16th anniversary about a month ago. We have 2 offices. Headquarters is in Grand Rapids on Wealthy Street, across from the delightful Sparrow's Coffee Shop. And we have an office in Ann Arbor, which is now 4 years old, almost exactly today, actually, come to think of it. And an interesting diversity of clients. Since I got the mic, I'll pitch my blog, Great Not Big. Interesting things there, I think at least. I have fun with it. Did you want us to tackle that other crazy hard question or just do intros?
Yeah, speak on what you feel in your heart.
Let's just do intros. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Aaron Schapp. I always hate talking about what I do because it feels like it takes forever. But I launched a company called Elevator Up. We've been around since 2004, helping companies launch new digital ventures. What that means is kind of helping them think through just what is, how do you think through the business side of those things? How do you better understand your customers? And then is it a feasible thing that you can kind of bring to market? So, or if they have something that already exists, then we can help enhance that. So we've got a small team of 13. We're right above Sanchez Restaurant, right next to the factory, if you're familiar with that. Speaking of, the factory is also one of my ventures. Just because I got tired of working by myself in my house. And I just invited some friends over, and that's turned into something that everyone's able to kind of join together. So that's right above Sanchez as well. Kind of in the theme of bringing people together, we started taking a lot of the things that we saw about how people work and interact together, and we said, well, what if we applied that to curiosity? And so co-learning is just really the model of how do we foster curiosity in West Michigan and kind of beyond, and just bringing people together around 12-week courses that launch business, technology, and design. So that is what I do.
Well, hello everyone. My name is Luis, and I'm a senior at Western Michigan University. I'm the founder of Loop Coding Center. So Loop Coding Center, we provide coding workshops and boot camps to teenagers. We understand that the technology world, women, Latinos, and African Americans are not going to those fields. So what we want to do, we want to build the fundamentals, and that is helping teenagers understand what coding is and how it works.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Mercedes Barragan. I work at Spectrum Health. I started my career there as communication specialist within information services. I have recently transitioned into human resources in the inclusion diversity department, team rather. Is that all we're supposed to share? Just where we are, who we're from. I'm feeling really excited today too. In my neighborhood, we might say she on one today, she on 10, she kind of hype. But we're gonna go ahead and keep it professional. Just let you know that I'm really excited about some things that are happening in our community, especially around diversity, inclusion, and social equity. Oh, you got one?
Thanks, and I went back. My name is Mike Morin, and I am part of the team that leads Start Garden. I have been around Start Garden since the beginning, but currently I co-direct Start Garden with my counterparts, Paul Moore, Daryl Ross, and Jorge Gonzalez. I'm also part of Wake Stream Ventures, the early stage venture capital firm that was kind of the original money behind Start Garden, and then I run the Seamless Accelerator, which is a program that works with 6 enterprises in the region, helping them scout technology all over the world and run experiments on that technology, trying to figure out how it impacts their business. Before that, I was involved in a series of local tech companies and a couple tech startups and even some physical product startups. So, yeah.
Great. And I'm Meredith Bronk, President and CEO of OST. OST just celebrated our 20th anniversary, and we're a consulting firm based on the west side that specializes in what we call from design to data center, so bringing about the ideas and the fruition of ideas, generally leveraging technology all the way through how and where something might run from a technology perspective. We started in the run side. I started at OST when I was 27 years old. I wasn't there day one, but it wasn't too long after that, actually as a project manager. So had the opportunity to take the CEO role just about 3 years ago. We are based in Grand Rapids. We have offices in Detroit and Minneapolis and London, and recently incorporated in Hong Kong and Singapore, where we followed a client basically into that region. So that's just taken off. I'm excited to be here.
Thank you so much. So Mike, I think it's only right that we start with you because we're in your house. This is the house that you built, and we're happy to be here. My mom said she couldn't believe that there were beers in the refrigerator. This is where you spend the vast majority of your time. So let's talk about this tech talent pipeline a little bit. You know, we'll start off keeping it very simple. Does Grand Rapids have, and maybe efficient isn't the proper adjective to describe it, but does Grand Rapids have currently an efficient tech talent pipeline?
No. So I'll elaborate. You know, like many things in Grand Rapids, and I think, I don't know if it's Jonathan, if it's you or Daryl or somebody that has kind of coined this, you know, phrase that we tend to be, you know, program rich and outcome poor.
Definitely Daryl.
You know, and I think that's the case in this. You know, we have some really solid programs. We have some really solid access points. I think we've got some work to do in terms of stringing them together, you know, in a coherent fashion. I mean, I think about what you're talking about your company does, and if we really look at it from, you know, the earliest stages, you know, in our K-12 schools and even before in building that talent, but then logically stringing together the what's next and making that a low friction kind of environment, and all the way up, you know, and sooner than later starting to engage them in what those real world jobs look like. You know, we've got some work to do, and I think you know forums like this that give us some place to dialogue about it and start connecting some of those dots. But again, I think there's a tremendous number of assets that are in place that we can leverage to start building that.
So, like, when I think about recent acquisitions that everybody's chattering still about Amazon buying Whole Foods, and so we know that companies that are tech or tech related are making these acquisitions, and they're kind of changing the landscape of the American economy and of the global economy and workforce. Carl, I think I'll bring you in here. Do you think that Grand Rapids needs to become a tech hub? Is it something that we should be aspiring for or not?
No. I don't, because I think one of the strengths of Grand Rapids is our economic diversity. And I think chasing after what people think of when you say the word tech hub is not a good idea, and maybe not even feasible or possible to pull off. So I think we should be thinking about the diversity of our economy, where we come from, our roots of manufacturing and advanced manufacturing now for the future, and how information technology plays a role in the manufacturers that we have in Michigan to making them globally competitive. It's a critical role, a competitive differentiator. All of these companies are becoming software companies, whether they like it or not. And so that's a huge challenge. That's a big enough challenge all by itself. And I think we'll be in a better place, and by preserving that which has made us strong in the past. You know, when I think about Tech Hub, I hear a little bit sort of like a one-horse town. And we have one of those in this state, and it didn't work out so well. That was Flint. And you know, you compare Flint and Grand Rapids, which were in very different places after World War II. You know, Flint being seen as like the success story, and Grand Rapids being like, ho-hum. Well, we see how that has played out, and that reliance on a single big company or one industry or sector, super risky. So I love the idea of diversity. Technology is certainly an important part of that, just by virtue of the fact that technology is a part of everything we do and a part of every product we build now, and all the services that are coming around products and all that kind of stuff.
Aaron, it looks like you want to jump in here and say something important.
Sweet. Well, so I agree with what you're saying, Carl. I think just saying something of where a tech hub is really hard because it's not terribly clear. And so when something's not very clear, it's harder for people to get behind. So when I was in St. Louis not too long ago, I got to check out, they have a place called Cortex, and Cortex is 200 square acres of innovation space. But for them, they didn't just say innovation. They focused on their core areas. And so like, just like we have core areas, they've got core areas where for them it's I think it's like agriculture, fintech, things like that. So as an entrepreneur or as a technologist, I knew that if I wanted to be in those spaces, I could go to those places. Didn't mean to rhyme. But I think those things are important because it also solves some of the attraction problem, and it also solves a lot of other issues that we can then focus on, from regulations to just awareness. So I think it's important for us to just keep some focus on what we're talking about, which tech might not be the thing. It might just be celebrating what we are already good at and making sure we're using that same language all the way through.
But Meredith, in our minds, right, we're talking about advanced manufacturing, so it seems we're talking about robots and artificial intelligence, because clearly, right, human beings aren't going to be doing the work in the factories anymore, right, where things are moving to. People don't want to pay for your lunch break and for AJ to be texting his lovely wife on their time. They want to maximize their dollars, their profits, and, as a CEO, you can understand you want to get the biggest bang for your buck. So essentially, we do need everybody trained in tech in some capacity, right?
Yeah, and when I think about Tech Hub, I think there's pros and cons to that. I do think that there's a recognition that technology is ubiquitous, it's everywhere, that manufacturing is different, that the financial services is different, that the roles that we have are different today and tomorrow than they were yesterday. And if acknowledging that as a region by saying we are technically savvy, we're technologically savvy, we're thinking about it, we're thoughtful about it, we're investing in it, I think that there's great benefit in that marketing, in that hype, in that recognition. Because whether it's through advanced manufacturing or artificial intelligence or connected products, whatever that is, technology is changing. It's creating new business models. It's creating new service lines. It's changing so much of who we are in West Michigan in a way that allows us to stay diverse. And I think that Carl talked about, that I think is, totally agree, is very critical. But our ability to acknowledge that and attract that talent that says we want to be progressive and attack those businesses that say we are progressive is also a really important part of the growth of Grand Rapids to stay relevant.
Absolutely. So on that note, Mercedes, you have a computer science degree, correct?
Advertising and public relations.
Advertising and public relations. But when you went to Spectrum, you started off in the IT department. And when they're talking about retention and attraction, I think of you, I think of the work that you've done in the young professionals community, and what has kept you in Grand Rapids, and what attracted you to the IT department at Spectrum Health.
That's a great question. So I'll start with what attracted me to IT. The position that I was in was managing our intranet through blog writing, graphic design, a little bit of coding, which I had gained in my previous job at Cascade Engineering. But it was really that communications background that I had that Spectrum Health was looking for at the time. And it was just a good mix. I really enjoy being in the technology space because it really is a space for innovation, especially at Spectrum Health. I would say what kept me here, I did not want to stay in Grand Rapids at all. And I know that sounds bad, but let me explain. Coming from the east side of the state, I am a Grand Valley graduate, proud Laker. I graduated in 2010, and I remember at the time looking around in the community and thinking, I must be like the only Mexican in town, or I must be the only Latina who is bilingual or who has this unique family story. I couldn't see other people of color. I couldn't find them. I was like, where is everybody hiding? I happened to get connected with an organization called Blend. If you'd like to know more, please connect with me after. But it was a space for young professionals of color. And what Blend does is really create a sense of belonging, right? So a lot of stories that I hear in Michigan, West Michigan specifically, that people of color don't feel like Grand Rapids is even their home. They can be born here, born and raised, and they still don't feel like Grand Rapids is their city. And it's really, really upsetting, and it's really, really sad. I don't know how many of you in here are familiar with West Michigan Nice, that term. If you're a person of color, you're like, yep, I know exactly what that is. To my white friends and audiences, if you don't know what that is, find a person of color and ask them to explain it to you. And maybe you'll learn something new today. But I would say that what has kept me here is connecting with these other people like myself who want to create a truly inclusive environment. So there's lots of good companies that are doing things in that space. Cascade Engineering is one of them. I think they have an office here. But they really walk the talk, and they are a manufacturing company. At Spectrum Health, we are not perfect, but we are certainly making strides towards becoming a truly diverse and inclusive place to work. So when we talk about how do we retain talent, how do we attract talent, and I think millennials are a particular generation that's constantly being targeted. And I'm sure I don't have to rattle off any statistics, but we all know millennials like inclusive workplaces, right? We want to volunteer at work, and we want to come in at our own time. We have all these kind of laundry lists of things because we're so demanding. But really, what I think West Michigan kind of has to learn is how to truly create that inclusive space. I just read an article that Detroit was named 21 out of 50 cities for the best tech talent. Maybe Carlos, you can help me out because I'm not 100% sure what that statistic was. I don't have my phone. But basically, Detroit is becoming like this place for tech talent. Granted, it's lower like entry-level jobs, programmers and those in computer science. But when I sit down and think about, okay, so why Detroit? What about Detroit? Being from the east side of the state, I love visiting Detroit. I love being there. I love the atmosphere. I love the people. I love the environment. I feel at home. And I've never even lived in Detroit. And I feel at home in Detroit. And sometimes I still feel like a stranger in my own city. And I would argue that there's probably a couple people in this room, and there's definitely some people of color who may feel that way. So when I think about retention, I think about these workplaces truly creating an inclusive environment. Microaggressions are real. White privilege is real. Racism is real. And to say that it does not exist in West Michigan, to say that it doesn't exist in your workplace, it's just not true.
Appreciate those words from the heart. So, Luis, this is a good time to segue to you. You're kind of like our organization. You're pioneering something new. So not just sitting back and saying, hey, West Michigan nice and these things aren't happening in our community, but you're actually becoming the change that you want to see in the community. What was the inspiration for the Loop Coding Center?
My own experience. So when I started coding back in junior high school, my classroom, I was the only Latino student, and there was only one girl. So being in a room where I was the only person of my kind, it made me feel out of place. So now that I'm in college, I still see the same issue. You know, most of them are white, not many girls, almost two. So my purpose is not to have another kid, another teenager go what I went through.
Short and sweet. So, Mike, I was privy to have there was a conversation you were having here at Startgun one day, and I was ear hustling, and I was just gathering information, because you know when you talk and pontificate, it's just nuggets and jewels and nuggets and jewels. And you were talking with a company about how their business model is going to change, and a lot of it had to do with how millennials perceive things, but another piece of it had to do with technology and how technology is evolving the workforce that has, you know, anchored Grand Rapids' economy thus far, and how that's changing and that they have to adapt, or, as we say at the Midwest Tech Project, go the way of the dodo. So talk about that a little bit, like how our major companies are gonna have to change the way that they're doing business.
Well, I think it plays back to some of what, you know, Carl was starting to talk about, you know, and the role that, you know, the technology, and not just technology, but how technology changes the way we behave and interact as you know, as society. And so I think, so one thing I think is a mistake is if we define technology as software. You know, for us OGs, right? Like when you say technology, I mean, you know, I'm thinking the lever, the wheel, the pulley, right? I mean, you know, but seriously, I mean, technology has had a lot of different definitions, and I think, you know, we started drawing this line that like all of a sudden software became technology. You know, there's material technology, there's manufacturing technology, there's all kinds of different, technology, and so you know, the way that it's being applied now. You know, so for instance, you know, the line between what's digital and physical is just disappearing. You know, what's a product and what's software? Like, look at how many of your products. I mean, you know, all of the chairs you're sitting in, all the walls you interact with, they're all going to become interactive. They're all going to become smart, right? You know, I don't want to hang my TV on a wall. I want a wall that's a TV, right? I don't want to put my computer on a desk. I want a desk that's a computer, you know, and all of that is just going to become a blur, right? And as it does, the other thing that's going to change is it's going to be almost indiscernible, the difference between a product and a service. You know, did you buy a chair because you wanted to own a chair, or did you buy a chair because you needed a place to sit, right? And if somebody will come up with a way just to charge you for when you sit in it, then you don't have to buy a chair, right? And you know, subscriptions have become the new credit. You know, I don't buy music anymore, but I'll pay $9.99 for the rest of my life. You know, to get the music I want, right? And so this is what's challenging. It's not technology when it gets applied, and when it gets applied appropriately and in its most impactful way, is always going to change the model and the business and the process, and it's always going to change the people and how people interact with it, right? So when we see technologies moving as fast as they are now, there is no way that Meyer's business or Steelcase's business or Cascade's business is going to be the same business it is now. And so when you start trying to take those technologies and try to cram them into the current business model, it gets really uncomfortable really fast. And so this is the conversation that every enterprise in America and every enterprise in this region, and you talk about, you know, Amazon buying Whole Foods. You know, I don't know if we know what that looks like, but if you're Meyer, you're probably thinking about it.
You have to be. Meredith, did you want to chime in on that?
Yeah, I was just going to say, we're doing a ton of work right now in the connected product space, and that everything, it's totally ubiquitous. The thing that, as a CEO, one of the things that I think a lot about is, and I also have 3 teenage children. I have 3 daughters, 13, 15, and 17, which is why I'm here tonight. I'm not at home, but But I think about their use and their adoption and what's normal to them when I say technology, and they kind of roll their eyes at me like, okay, Mom. So I think part of the adaptation and part of the adoption on the behavior side is how things are being used and how consumers will demand and will ask and will want for that change in use. And the change in use requires a different business model, and the different business model begets a change in use, and it becomes a highly circular equation. And so I think part of the adaptation for us as businesses is to ensure that we're listening to folks who use their products differently, and we don't blow them off because the old way has always worked for us. And I do think that as we look at Whole Foods and Amazon versus what Meijer's doing, there are threats everywhere, and our ability to adapt to those as businesses is important, and our ability to listen to the users about how their behavior is changing is a leading indicator of those moves that need to be made.
Absolutely. Mercedes, you grabbed the mic. You want to jump in there?
Yeah, I just wanted to add some kind of cool things that are happening in the healthcare space with technology. And this is not a plug for MedNow, but I actually just had my first online doctor visit. So I was on video with my doctor. And I can't believe how easy it was, and I can't believe how effective it was. And I was very, very hesitant. I was ready to schedule an appointment with my doctor. But just the way we're using technology in healthcare is really, really quite amazing. There's an article circling around. Someone, I believe, developed an app or is looking to develop an app for the LGBT community where they can actually search for doctors that are culturally competent in transgender issues and LGBT issues. So you think about as a transgender person, as a person of color, or maybe as someone who doesn't even speak English, right? How do you find your healthcare provider? How do you find your doctor? How do you find a space where you actually feel comfortable? So Spectrum Health is really working on being patient-centered. And I'm not saying that's that technology that we're working on, but these are just kind of just some of the many, many innovations that are happening in the healthcare space. We already have robots performing surgery, right? We already do that, but I think some of the things that we're doing with the My Health app and the MedNow is pretty cool.
Absolutely.
Well, so I was going to go on that. I think one of the things that I've been noticing, and if I maybe even zone back to the tech kind of hub area, one of the things that I'm seeing cities doing differently that allow, I think, for it to be a tech hub or kind of at least kind of adopt that brand if they so choose, is how they go about with those innovations. And I think that's something that West Michigan is beginning to understand, but it's really a core of a collaboration. I think collaboration is something that as companies, large organizations, it's sometimes easy to not think about collaboration as much. Not that they're trying to be evil, but they're just thinking it more as, well, I can do an acquisition. So I think we really celebrate, even sometimes as startups or entrepreneurs, we think, oh, we should get acquired. There's a lot of opportunities for organizations to provide these new levels of innovations without having to go out and just acquire it and then let it die. I think that what I love about a region is if they can actually allow for those new innovations. I love the fact that Meijer can partner with Schapp, right? And I love the fact that I know about that because that's amazing. They could have done something, in my opinion, stupid, which would have been go acquire them, pull underneath the umbrella of that, and may or may not have actually been successful. So I think if you're talking about technology, and even if we just do bring it back to software, I as an entrepreneur feel like I have the opportunity to actually provide new value, launch new products, and not feel like it's going to be sucked into the abyss. And I think that when you can do those things and you can continue to grow as an organization if they're shipped, it also gives all of us the opportunity to try a lot of new ventures, to launch our own things, continue to grow those things. And that I think also diversifies the things that we can offer as individual employers of those new ventures. And I think innovation is just a lot better because innovation happens because you've got large organizations that understand really complex things. Like if you're going into the healthcare space, you can't take the Facebook's model of move fast and break things, right? Because people die, right? So I don't want a new entrepreneur or even an old entrepreneur to not attack that space because they have a lot of new ideas for new technology. They might not just have the resources that a Spectrum Health might have. So instead of Spectrum having to solve that problem, Spectrum can leverage some of their knowledge, leverage some of their assets, leverage some of their resources, and take advantage of all these great, beautiful minds that we have both here and also within the community. So I think when we're looking at a tech community, it is around, I think, not being selfish and trying to do it all ourselves, but how do we start collaborating more together and doing it and being very public about that, which probably goes into a whole separate topic, but I don't think we're very public about those things. I go on a whole nother rant right there, but.
So we want to, Carl, did you have anything you want to say on that? Well, Aaron, we'll stay with you,
Shoot.
right? We'll give you another crack at this. Education is key in all of this stuff, and you've been like one of the people who has laid the foundation for tech education here in Grand Rapids with, you know, co-learning clearly and some of the work at the factory. What's the best way, what's the best approach to get people prepared for a workforce that's going to have to be lean and mean, is going to have to adapt, it's going to have to evolve very quickly. You may be doing 6 or 7 different jobs depending on the service that's needed or, you know, what the customers want, as Meredith said. How are you guys approaching that work?
Yeah, I mean, probably in spirit of what I mentioned earlier, we do it together. And I think as much as I love technology, I hate online education, right? And I think that there's a lot of advantages and there's time to be able to use that, but shit, like it gets hard when you're in your basement trying to figure out how to code or when you're trying to figure out how to do business. And I also like hate the fact that when you can learn these things, there's no one you can look at to your left and to your right and be like, am I doing this right? Or I'm totally stuck here. And so I think from an educational standpoint, whoever is providing education, I think you need to do that with the community and the village that you live within. On top of that, we have some amazing resources, even just in this room, that I don't feel like they're leveraged in a useful way. I think a lot of that gets stuck inside of organizations and then they go home and they hang out with their kids. That's great. It's not helpful to anybody else. And so giving all those people a chance to be able to show up and mentor and advise and pour into somebody else, I think is really helpful. And in many cases, I think they just need a framework. I'm super biased because I think co-learning is that framework. But there's a lot of other organizations I think also provide a lot of value, even beyond co-learning. And different people need different things, and that's important. I lost my track. What were we talking about again?
Talking about education.
I'll save you. So before I started Atomic, I was a professor of computer science at Grand Valley State. And I knew at the time that I was teaching there that we weren't really teaching software development very well. They had these models based on like 1960s approaches to gigantic projects with thousands of engineers and crazy project management, and like you got to extract the humanity out of software development to make it work because the scale was so large. And that just wasn't appropriate to 99% of the software that gets written, which is for businesses, and it's on small teams, and it needs to be, you know, tightly coupled to the end user and those kind of things. On the other hand, universities shouldn't be written off as the right place to start your educational process. And so I think we need to think really carefully about how do we make darn sure that those universities are accessible to everybody. Because I don't think all of the creative solutions in the world are going to make up for starting people without a university education in a technical field. Now, having said that, you finish a CS degree, you are by no stretch of the imagination a real-world software developer. There's a huge gap that comes after that, and you need to get through that gap somehow. And that's where I think the creative solutions come in, and the co-learning and the supporting each other. We started a program called the Atomic Accelerator about 1.5 years ago, where we brought young people right out of college, CS degrees, who were well prepared in a theoretical sort of sense, but not software developers in a professional sort of sense. And we dedicated a senior developer to being a mentor for them. We put them in a cohort so they could support each other, co-learn, I suppose you could say, internally at least. And we organized professional development exercises for them. We took them to Strange Loop, which is the place to go if you're a software developer in terms of geeking out on cool tech stuff. They supported each other. They got mentoring from and feedback from the project leads, from the projects they were on, the client projects they were on. This has been a big hit. They're really, really happy about this. And it's something that we have done better than we ever have in 17 years at bringing young people into our profession and our craft. And that's a 2-year program. They won't, by any stretch of the imagination, be done in 2 years, but they're going to be one hell of a lot farther along than they would have been without it. So I think we can find creative ways where we have that industry doing their part and universities doing their part. I think that's really important.
And Mike.
Yeah, so Aaron, you and I are going to end up, we'll end up having an interesting conversation here. So Carl, I agree that universities, we'll talk about universities specifically, play a role. But here's where I think the challenge is. We're dealing in a construct there that's pretty ancient. So Aaron and I both did a stint at different times at an ad agency that worked, very heavily with universities. And when you talk with a university, you hear about two things, right? You hear about student attraction and retention. So I got to get you in the door, and then you're a 4-year annuity. And I've built my entire model around it. Things like expiring credits, prerequisites, not being able to cross different colleges, right? So these constructs in this day and age don't make any sense, right? Why, why, especially since we talk about being lifelong learners, well then why, when I become a part of a university, am I not a part of a lifelong process? And why isn't that mixed with work? Why isn't that, go ahead, Carl, you had something to say.
This is cool, Mike, because I think the answer to that question is because what you should be learning in a university is how to be a lifelong learner. I could care less what technology they use in the computer science department. I'm not hiring for that. I want them to come out curious, intellectual, hardworking, analytical, problem solvers. That's all I care about. Yeah. Give me those people, and we can do the rest.
But Aaron's going to get in here. I agree with that, but sitting in classes doing case studies and working on fake stuff doesn't build curiosity. It's so disconnected from what you actually do when you graduate that without that, that interjection of, wow, I could, I know what it looks like to be a developer at AO because I did an internship over the summer. I'm not convinced that, sitting in a classroom with 150 kids going through a book is like really creating this thriving curiosity in people. So this is where I think you need the mix of, and co-learning starts to kind of get into this, right? In terms of because universities don't really address that, there are other opportunities. But I agree with you, universities play a role. But I think the construct really needs rethinking.
They also play a credentialing role, which can't be denied.
Well, would you rather see somebody with a CS degree, or would you rather give them a problem to solve and write some code?
It's an unfortunate role. Like, they have the lock on the credentials, and that is important today. So if you're trying to get into the field, you sometimes need those credentials. Like, we'll consider hiring somebody without a formal university degree under certain circumstances, but I bet you Spectrum Health won't.
Right.
So, but I couldn't agree more, Mike, that universities are an imperfect place. I am not at the university anymore because it drove me crazy. Like, the status quo bias was so strong. On the other hand, it's like the Catholic Church. It's been around for thousands of years, or at least 1,000 years. So they don't change very rapidly. I think we should push them like crazy to change and to improve. But I wouldn't dismiss them entirely. They're doing something important there, especially in fields where, all of the, like, I can pick up all these resources online and I can become a JavaScript programmer and I can learn this or that or the other thing, but how many of you are out there with the self-discipline to study theory of languages and theory of computing and structure of languages and operating systems and networking? Like, very few people have the discipline to do that. And that's where that's where we see the gaps, which are really hard to address in any other fashion.
Aaron, you have to jump in here. I saw you reaching for the mic as Carl was.
Okay, so most of the stuff has been said, but I feel like and I gotta be careful too because I didn't go to college. I don't even know if I graduated from high school yet. And so it's really not important. My mom graduated me. It's an awkward prom. But I think so a couple of things that I look at is all right, well, the amount of money that you have to put into education. If you're going to talk to people about being fiscal, like, it used to be economically makes sense to go to college. You'd get an average of an 8% return on your money. That's just not the case anymore. So if I look at how am I investing my money, and many of us are going into debt, I feel like that puts us into situations in which we shouldn't be in. College is right for some people. And there's lots of positions in which you should go to college, right? If you're going to be a doctor, it totally makes sense, right? Co-learning doesn't have a model for that. yet. I don't want to go to the cold. It's going to be amazing, but it's very experimental. It's in Mexico right now. But I think that there's a lot of different factors. And universities, like you said, are going to be around forever. And I do hope that they continue to show up. And I wish that they don't expect us to show up and go to them. I want them to be at events like this. I want them to come to the meetups that are happening. And not that I need everybody, but I think some of the stuff isn't any more difficult than the 2 words of just showing up. And the fact that I don't see that makes me a little disappointed. And I do feel that not all professions require you to go through so much education, lots of value. But if you're gonna learn how to code, I would recommend volunteer at a local nonprofit, learn how to code, talk to some friends, take that same money and do something else with it. But I'm also seeing is a lot of kids graduating from college that also have no portfolio. So they have maybe a lot of head knowledge, but they're also not, they can't show anything for it. And I'm really disappointed in that. It's I still hate the fact that you can graduate and get an MBA without actually have ever launched a business. So I think a lot of those things, whereas yes, we are gonna have universities forever, I do think we do need to take a serious look and rethink that. Now to your point, Mike, why can't I go and become a student at a university and not have a lifelong learning? I am impressed by some organizations, like I think it was MIT, that's starting to say, hey, if you're a student here, you're a student forever and you can take courses forever. That's a tilt in the right direction, because they're saying things are changing and you can continue to learn. I do feel there's organizations and universities who are making those shifts, but I would like to be careful of everybody having the default answer of, okay, you graduated from high school, so you have to go to college. I think it's extremely disrespectful if Spectrum's not looking at people that don't have degrees. I would never be able to get a job at most of the organizations around here. I wish that you guys would update that process a little bit more. Not looking at you directly. But anyways, I just think that that's something we gotta be careful of, just defaulting and saying, let's put all of our energy into helping universities. We should put some of our energy toward helping universities, and we should also put some of our energy toward a lot of other things as well.
Quickly, we got to get...
No, I'm just going to go
ahead.
ahead and step in really quick, because Spectrum Health was called out. And while we are not perfect, I will defend Spectrum Health and her interests fiercely. So I will say that this is a systems change thing, right? So being in the healthcare, in some areas, we do need a high caliber, we do need that education. And I'm not saying that's in all areas, but it is in a lot of areas that we have, right, work in healthcare. So our internship program within information services, I don't have numbers and I can't remember, but I was involved in that recruiting process. So one of the things we needed to make sure of is, one, that everyone that came on was diverse, visibly diverse. We're talking skin color, culture, education, background. And when I say that, I'm saying that we were hiring interns for information technology with liberal arts degrees. Someone who probably would never step into technology, right? Do you still have to have a degree? Yes, we were enrolling college students, but I joined information services without having any sort of IT background at all. The coding that I did know was because someone took me under their wing and showed me a couple things. And then I went ahead and went to HTML3 schools and just looked up a couple very basic stuff, right? But it's a systems change, and it's something that I can see it happening in pockets. So that goes back to a change not just in our thinking, right, but even in HR. So what makes a qualified candidate? What are all the qualifications that person needs to have? And that comes to the education of recruiters. Are they able to see those transferable skills from industry to industry in education and background? So someone with a liberal science degree can very well have really good analytical skills or critical thinking skills. In fact, I want to say that a lot of our leaders within IS do not have computer science degrees. They are actually accountants, they are engineers, they are liberal studies people. So just had to say that.
Two things. So Meredith, I want to bring you in here, but I want Mike real quick. You've recruited Grand Circus over here to Stargarden. That's been a big effort. We should acknowledge that is an organization that's under the auspice. Can you talk a little bit about that program and how they're educating people for the tech talent pipeline?
Yeah. So sure. So I don't know that we recruited them as they were looking to come over here, and they are a piece of that that tech talent pipeline that's offering an alternative path in education to people that want to work in technology, and it's been successful. I mean, we've right out of the gate, we've had people that went through and have jobs, and Aaron, you can tell stories of co-learning where they're Aaron's co-learning is great, Grand Circus is great. We still have nowhere near enough capacity to do what we need to do, but they had a model that was working in Detroit. And it filled a gap, and I think it just proves that as we continue to increase the offerings, the community is ready. As we connect, the community is ready to start filling the spaces, and we've been thrilled with the diversity that we've seen. They've been intentional about recruiting it, but we've been really thrilled with the mix we've seen coming through the program. So
Absolutely. So Meredith, you can talk about anything you want, with us.
I might.
You have carte blanche with us, with the Midwest Tech Project and City Hacks GR. But we definitely want to know, in your mind, what level of collaboration needs to be happening between the tech industry and our local school districts. But again, talk about anything that was on your mind.
That's part of what I was going to go to, because your original question was kind of, where does it live? Where does that education process live, and where does that responsibility live? And although I think there's the end of the journey as you find people who come into this space, there's the start of that journey, which happens way, way, way before college and co-location and co-learning and everything else that we're talking about. There is a need to get into the schools. As a woman, female CEO of a technology company, I am a minority. And when I talk to people about diversity in technology, I can't solve it today for today. Today, I'm trying to solve it for 10 years from now by getting down into the school system, because in all of this conversation, you have to make it relevant. You have to make it reachable. You have to make it accessible. You have to make it normal and natural and inclusive in, I see somebody who's like me, or I see what it can be. We did the thing over at Ottawa Hills High School, and I think things like that if there's a room full of kids who are in 7th grade and you can touch 2 or 3 of them, it makes a difference. Absolutely. And so the opportunity that we have to expose children, middle school, 6th, 7th, 8th grade, statistics where you start to lose them, to the possibility, it allows for the opportunity for continuing education. It allows for the opportunity of immersion. So I think the partnerships, and I see a ton of that locally, some of the work that you guys are doing, and in the female arena with, BitCamp, and there's some other really great programs that are out there kind of reaching kids in the schools. But I think it has to be a partnership in the middle school and into high school. And I'm not as directly involved kind of at the high school level. I love some of the coding and stuff that you're talking about, Luis, because I feel like, we start to expose the 7th graders and we do some websites or whatever those kind of opportunities might be. And then we have to stay with it. How do we provide a continuous, because the school systems they're not equipped at this point to be relevant in that space.
With the school districts right now, Meredith, in your opinion, there is some good work going on, is what I'm hearing, but we're not doing a good enough job to compete for where things are going.
Yeah, there's gaps. I think there's a lot of effort. I applaud. There's a lot of effort going on right now in our region. I think people are being thoughtful about it, but there's still a lot of gaps. We had the opportunity through some of the work that we do with the Kent counties, the Kent ISD, and we brought teachers in and taught them for a day and let them see what the workforce is like and talk about because they don't know, they're educators, they're not technologists. So to equip them to have different conversations with their students, so now they have a different level of awareness. There's all sorts of opportunities like that I think are just kind of a persistence that has to happen in order to be effective, so that systemically we can make those systemic changes. I also think, just real quick, that if we want to bring diversity, we have to change the system.
Mm-hmm. Aaron, we got to bring you in on this, because I'm thinking about that. Please, applause for Meredith every time she speaks is only right. So, Oh, Aaron, we have to bring you in and then get Luis back involved with this conversation. But Aaron, I'm just thinking about as a mid-'80s baby myself, we used to go to the library. And we used to go to the encyclopedia and the Encyclopedia Britannica, which was a huge thing at that time. And we had to research and cross-reference and research just to get to one solid answer that we would bring back to the classroom and present. Now the answers are all there for you via this smartphone. I mean, we're walking around with computers. But you've chosen an unconventional route to educate people to the tech industry and to trying to get them into the tech talent pipeline. Talk about the inspiration for that and talk about what your goals are. What are the outcomes?
I mean, so lots of stuff. I mean, maybe just one quick point on what Meredith was saying, but also just if I can also be respectful to a lot of universities and schools, because I think as much as I have like a strong perspective in another way, like I also believe that it's unfair to kind of just chastise them and say, well, they're not doing enough. Because it's an incredible amount of resources to be able to pull these things off. And to your point, there's a lot of change that goes on inside of this. And I think, to my even earlier point, I think we have the opportunity in a region to start working together. So does a university have to solve all those problems? I don't actually know if they have to. I think those are things where they can start to leverage, like a Grand Circus or like a co-learning, and we could all start being better together. So I think there's a lot of creative opportunities where we don't need to say it's all co-learning or it's all Grand Valley. It doesn't have to be that. And I think if we start to look at those things a little bit more holistically, I think we'll do way better as a community than if we're just trying to say it's all of them and they got to figure it all out. And if they don't, then they're bad. So let's jump onto the next bandwagon, because the next thing that's going to happen, they're going to start yelling at me that I'm doing something wrong. So that's one way we can start to break that cycle, I think, a little bit. As far as why I started co-learning, I feel like most of the reasons why I start things is not necessarily intentional. I started co-learning by accident, really because when we were hanging out in the factory, we just started talking to other people who were learning some things. People are taking some online courses, and they said, oh, I was just getting really stuck on how to build an iPhone app, and I'm learning this kind of stuff, and I heard that somebody else was also learning these things, and so he was almost like 2 weeks ahead of this person. So I said, shoot, you guys should just get together and start hanging out a little bit. So they did that, and they actually took the same course online, but they did it together. And then they started getting a little stuck, and the tool they were using was really helpful, but it just they had a lot more questions. And so they said, well, do you know of anybody else? I was like, well, I know this person. So we just kind of very organically started pulling people together. Next thing we know, we started having these courses where we were 6 weeks long, and the only reason we charged people money is because we wanted to make sure the instructor showed up every week. And it made it easier for me to demand that the person was going to show up if we actually were paying them. Otherwise, I just felt it was a little disrespectful to just to tell them to show up when there's nothing for them. So we did that for a little while, and then we did that for actually a couple of years. We did a partnership with the MEDC in the right place, where we were able to get some funds to help people who are unemployed, underemployed, and looking to change careers. And to be honest, that was an amazing experience, because the amount of talent and people that came through our doors just totally changed my perspective on so many different levels. I mean, I'll be the first to say, like, as soon as I think of like Michigan Works and I think of unemployed, I think of just a default persona. And I was 100% wrong. That was my fault. Just hearing the different stories, there's definitely those stereotypes, but there's so many amazing people that I never would have had a chance to interact with if I didn't get to go through like a Michigan Works and start using some of their talent. So they started coming through our programs. We worked really well together, and that turned into a 75% job placement rate. And we continue to watch that past 90 days.
75% job placement.
Yeah, and it wasn't really anything special. It was just a matter of, it wasn't like I was trying to work really hard on, you got to go through this perfect program, but we did something really simple where we said, hey guys, like, companies don't hire anybody. They never have. People hire people. And so if you just start to talk to people, you start getting jobs. And just some of those really small mindsets of so many people just start to throw out a resume, and it's kind of like this dating scenario for them. They're like, all right, do I call now or do I wait like 3 days? No, it's too soon. Like, okay, should I just send a long email, which is what I really want to say, or should I just send a quick little text to show them cool? It's not like that, right? But literally that's how almost everybody interacts when they're applying for a job.
Tough question to answer, because I don't know, all the school districts and all the communities, but my guess is that the communities we perceive to be more tech-oriented kids are being inspired by what they see in their parents and their friends' parents and the careers and the companies. It's like in the air. It has less to do with the direct curriculum in the school as it does their life experience.
Uh-huh. Great answer. Luis, so you're actually doing this work, though. We're talking about it and we're conceptualizing and we're theorizing, but you're doing this in Grand Rapids, and you didn't have the support like we did from all of the who's who in the community, just you and your team, and you're making it happen. Talk a little bit about that.
So yeah, so in my team, I'm the only one who knows how to program, and it is kind of hard when we get to a point where we don't have resource or no one to reach out to find information. You know, when we were creating the curriculum, it was a very hard moment because we didn't know what to do. There was no one to talk about, and then the only resources were websites. Now, if we look at websites, why are we going to copy a website when the customer can go directly to the website and not to us? So it was kind of hard, but the good thing about my team is that they like to talk, especially one of them. So he makes a lot of connections real quick, and that was one of the keys to getting to organizations, getting the conversation started. So that's how we've been working right now. You know, reaching out different organizations. Some of them require multiple things for us to be there. It's kind of sad because no, we are still not in that level where we are professionals or we have everything all set, but we have the idea and the passion to do it.
And how can everybody here and everybody who's going to be watching, when we chop this up and AJ replays this on his Instagram over and over and over again, how can we support you in Loop Coding Center?
You know, sometimes it's not just about money, it's about talking, making the conversation started, reaching out, making connections. I think is one of the hardest things for us to do, setting up a meeting, especially for us that we are in college students and we also have a side job. It's really hard to meet during business hours. So for us to be able to meet someone, we gotta put something down. And we understand that, you know, you gotta lose something to win something.
Absolutely.
And I think for anyone who wants to help organizations like us, it's just, you know, trying to sit down and be on our level.
Absolutely. So with that being said, we have a wonderful audience here from the community. This has been a very lively discussion thus far. We're at 7:16 exactly. We have to field questions from the community at this point for our panelists. So, yep.
Cool.
Hey, thanks. Hi, my name is Jeremy Evans-Smith. I'm from Grand Rapids, but I just moved back from California, from like the Bay Area and stuff. So I resonate with what you're saying sometimes, with like how it feels like home or doesn't. But I guess my question is kind of taking like, seeing what tech is like there and what tech is like here. I'm curious how you guys would tackle the question of like, what does it look like to engage with organizations that have their processes that work and might not want to change and try something else that isn't quite proven or might not be as familiar, but might open up access to more people of different demographics, different backgrounds, or of a non-traditional background. Sorry, that was a really wordy question. Do you guys, should I reword that or? Okay, all right, cool, thanks.
It's there's a lot. I think that's a pretty loaded question, but I'll start with something simple in recruiting. So recruiters are like the gatekeepers, and oftentimes are having to work with managers and helping them understand why this candidate would be a perfect candidate. And sometimes managers will have people that they kind of already have in mind. And because we're human, we kind of naturally connect with people who are like us. Sometimes they look like us. We have the same interests. But starting to change the process of how we recruit and where we recruit is a first step, I think. And it's not just something that Spectrum Health is working on or that has to, but I think a lot of organizations in Grand Rapids could really benefit from taking a look at their recruiting process and understanding where are we pulling from, right? Is our pool of candidates all white? Are they just in West Michigan? Do they all just happen to graduate from Grand Valley, right? So what are we doing to extend our resources? And then also, what are we doing to help ensure that our recruiters are culturally competent, right? Because we all have our own bias when we come into any place, and recruiters are no different. So how can we help educate recruiters in being more culturally competent, but also sharing that same knowledge with the managers who are looking to hire? Because at the end of the day, it's managers kind of who make the decision, but our recruiters have to be empowered enough to say, this is why you need this candidate, or this is how these skills transfer over.
Jeremy, I think that you count on their own self-interest. Like hiring talented, smart people is its own reward. And then the other element of this is educating people on the advantages of a diverse workforce, not just because, yay, diversity, but because it makes you a stronger, more resilient, more creative, better problem-solving organization. So if that's not of interest to you as a business, and you're my competitor, I'm really happy about that. I couldn't agree more, Mercedes, that companies can do things, and these things are not all of that complicated. We set a goal 4 years ago to employ more women. We were at 9% of our company who were women at the time. We're just above 25% now. The first time I started caring about this issue in 2007, we made zero progress. I didn't get the whole company behind it. I didn't spend the time to educate everyone on why and what the advantages were. We probably had crazy language in our hiring material, unintentional bias that we were unaware of. We educated ourselves on that. We went looking in different places. We sponsored different things. There are things you can do. That is a repeatable pattern, and you can succeed in that. So.
And the other thing I would say is for most of the companies are really struggling to find talent. So the notion that their current processes are working is not true.
Self-interest.
Right. Again, back to his self-interest. And to the degree that they see organizations that are embracing some of these practices outperforming them, outcompeting them, they will change. And I think we're seeing that right now.
I would also add that any business, so at Spectrum Health, we are really trying to create an environment where we are reflections of the communities that we're serving. So our mission is to improve the health of our communities. We can't do that unless our organization looks like the people that we're serving. Everything from our CEO to the person who's mopping the floors. So when you come into our facilities, do you have someone there that can speak your language? Or do you have somewhere, and there's diversity of thought, right, which we absolutely 100% need, but sometimes we just need to visibly see that there are people like us in the workplace as that initial kind of first step. You can have, I won't get into it, but what I'd like to say is that it's really, really, really important, and it just makes good business sense. I don't care what industry you're in, whether it be healthcare, manufacturing. You have a customer, you have a business, you have a client, and they are diverse. So you need to make sure that your workforce is just as diverse as the people you're serving.
Absolutely. More community questions, please.
A little bit of anti-university guys, some of
What does LCC stand for?
Loop Coding Center.
Loop Coding Center.
And so, my question to you is, when we're reaching out to these kids, whether it's in our company or in our community, how can we encourage them to not fall into the trap of this 4-year kind of institution, the pressure that they need to,
Yes.
seek that bachelor, master, whatever, but just really follow what they want to learn and how to eventually get a profitable career and lifestyle.
That's too long of a question for me to
Yeah,
repeat.
that's all right. I'll start with this one as a dad who dropped an 18-year-old off at University of Michigan, and who's a double Spartan himself. Watch it back there. So this is what I think is interesting. So as much as I'll rant about universities and broken universities, right? Nobody's a victim. Okay, in this case, in universities, you can find a path in any university in this state. I guarantee you can get an education that will equip you, but you're gonna have to go get it. You're gonna have to, spend the time with the profs, look to the internships, go to the extracurricular activities. Yes, if you go follow the path of least resistance and just be a sheep and wander around, you're gonna get what you get. But I think that's the message, and this is the we had a very robust conversation. My daughter wasn't sure she was going to go to college, and 4.2 GPA and all that kind of good stuff, and just wasn't sure that was the path for her. And this is the conversation we had, and we went and visited and looked at that stuff. So I think, again, it's easy to beat up on institutions because they're these kind of big nameless, faceless things that you can poke at. But I think, at the end of the day, it's all one person at a time in every single one of these, and personal responsibility, once you're at the university, plays a big role in it. And Carl, as a professor, you probably would have had a lot to say about that too. I mean, different students you saw come through.
Oh, yeah. Huge range. And that top 10% who really engaged and took every advantage and made the effort came away with a very different experience. Big surprise. Tuesday night, I went to the awards ceremony for the skilled trades. This was a really interesting experience because they're handing out project awards for, who had the best sheet metal work and who did the best low voltage lighting and who had the best HVAC and who had the best plumbing and who had the best steel work and concrete. The language they were using was the language we use about craftsmanship and pride. And you go to school to learn to be a skilled tradesperson, but you need to then go into the field and work with your hands and work with someone who's more experienced than you and be mentored by them Yep, same darn thing. And there's a huge shortage, as it turns out, of these skilled trades. And unfortunately, there's this, I think, mistaken belief that the only possible way to success in life is through the university. Right. And man, if I had a kid, in fact, I have a kid, come to think of it, who should probably be doing this. And he started at university, and it wasn't the thing for him, and he wasted my money and his time, and he left the university. And he probably should do some program like this. But it was, coming out of EGR, super hard socially to say, I'm going to go become a carpenter. Right. And that's really, really a shame. Mm-hmm. Interestingly, that there are organizations, I don't know if they're like the trade unions or there's some other thing, it's called ABC in town, I can't unfortunately know what that stands for, that they do the education element. Like it's a formalized thing to become a skilled electrician. And then an apprenticeship, and they really have it down. I think other countries do it better than we do, and we are missing the boat here. So I don't think it's only university or bust.
So I will share just a little bit of my background. I am the daughter of immigrant parents. My mom just barely graduated high school, and my dad has a 3rd grade education. So for them, encouraging me to go to school was a big deal because they felt that education was the only way that could take me out of the kind of manual, labor-intensive jobs that they had. So I'm thinking this whole time I'm growing up, okay, I have to go to school to be a doctor, an anesthesiologist. I have to go to school to be all these things, right, so I can make enough money so I can support my family. College was just an abstract for my parents. They really didn't know how to get me there. It was a process that I had to learn all on my own. And I don't regret it at all. I went to Grand Valley State University. I loved it. I went to Cornerstone for my MBA. I'm a huge advocate. However, I have younger cousins, and while my aunts and uncles are still asking them, what do you want to be? What do you want to do? What do you want to go to college for? What do you want to go to college for? I'm like, stop asking them that. Ask them what problem they want to solve in the world. Ask them to look around and say, how can I help fix this? If the answer is going to a four-year university, fantastic. If the answer is going to vocational school, fantastic. But I don't have any kids, but when I do, I have a whole spiel for them. Don't encourage your kids. Don't say to them, what do you want to be? What do you want to do? You have to go here, you have to go here. Ask them what they're passionate about. What problems do they want to solve? And the careers will come later. I mean, if we're going to be frank, right? I graduated from Grand Valley in 2010, and at the time, the idea of a social media manager was like not really a thing in 2010, right? So how can you possibly prepare your kids in any school, right? Whether that be K through 12 or four-year university, for jobs that you don't even know exist yet. We're training our kids right now to do certain jobs. In 10 years, 5 years, there's gonna be new jobs that we have no idea how to train for. The only way you're gonna do it is by either on jobs, skills training, but you're using people with those creative skills, right? Those analytical skills, those problem-solving skills. So I would just encourage our kids to do what you're passionate about, solve a problem, be who you are, and then be passionate about, because whatever you're passionate about, your career is gonna come, success is gonna come.
You have one already. Yeah, more community questions. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to thank the panel. I think this is just awesome, amazing. You guys are doing a great job. And thank you for hosting and presenting this platform tonight. My name is Paul Doyle. I'm CEO of Inclusive Performance Strategies. We're a firm that enhances organizations' performance through inclusion, as simple as that. In listening to the comments, I think your guys are spot on a lot of the different aspects of what we're experiencing here within Grand Rapids as a community. I'm always saying that organizations can recruit, but communities retain. All right? And we have not figured out how to bridge that gap in a way that we can have the abundance that we should have from the efforts that we put forth. One of those is how we behave as a community, and in how we embrace diversity or equity or inclusion. Some of us have the assumption that in order to embrace it, they look at it from a scarcity, that I have to lose something in order for someone else to gain, where actually it's in an abundant fulfillment, a value proposition that, of course, as you all said, we all gain, we all grow. There's a lot more there for all of us. So with that, and with the Spectrum Health connection, I worked at Spectrum Health also, and when I was there, I was only one of 3 persons of color in a managerial position in the whole system. So I can relate to where you're at now that I have my own firm. But, and being a transplant from Brooklyn, New York, housing projects in Brooklyn, and now I'm here in Michigan, and it's a long story, too much for tonight. But I feel we're at a point where, when I'm listening to you and I'm understanding everything that's coming out of the tech industry and how it's making us effective, efficient, innovative, and giving us these ability to do all these amazing things, I'm wondering, from your perspective, how can we harness this energy to change behavior of our community to be more inclusive, to create more intentional relationship building platforms that gives individuals the ability to address their assumptions or misperceptions, and maybe enhance their personal diversity in their personal circle as well as their professional circle, because we know this is all about relationships. And the more we break down those walls, the more we're able to gel and create this glue that we want as a community. So I see this opportunity for us to utilize our technology to create that access cross-culturally and interactive. And I just want to hear your perspective on that.
I think business happens after the relationship forms. So we need to work on forming the relationships. And that just means, to me, it means proximity. I need to be around people who don't look like me. I think GRAB, the Grand Rapids Area Black Business Association or group or whatever, is a fantastic example of that. It's a meeting I can go to whenever I'm in town, and then I can meet interesting people who aren't like me. Form relationship, who knows where that goes? That's going to take a while. It's an organic approach, but I think ultimately that's the answer.
So, John, you know, we could have a conversation about GRAB, right? And even, you know, how we all come to be sitting here tonight, and we're working with Jonathan. You know, your point's dead on. You know, so, you know, part of this just goes back to when Stark Garden started, and we had our, you know, our website, and people could submit stuff, and you know, we felt like it was highly accessible to the public, but yet the connection and participation with with people of color, with certain, it just didn't happen, and so we started having some conversations. And I think it was, you know, Jonathan and Jamil and Paul Moore and I were having this conversation about entrepreneurs, realized they knew a bunch of entrepreneurs we didn't know, we knew a bunch they didn't know, and so we came up with this really ingenious high-tech solution. Let's all go to dinner, right? And so seriously, so this is where this grab dinner thing started. We're just like, back to your point, it's like, in West Michigan, it's going to be relational before it's transactional, for sure. So that's where it started. And now there's just kind of been all these relationships that have come from that, like literally as simply as every month or two, you know, having a dinner and some drinks and just getting people hanging out together. And we could go on and on about the stories of the different connections that are happening from that. But I think you're dead on, Carl.
I just want to make one other comment too. I think as employers, it's important for us to encourage folks that we do bring in to be very, very, very intentional in how we bring folks in, not only into the workplace, but also try to make those community connections once they're inside of the workplace. Because if you have one or two or three people who look like you, it's still an intimidating place to be. So our ability to encourage the growth of that circle as an employer is something that we're intentional about, creating those connections so that your community and my community can come together differently. You know, one by one and piece by piece. In addition to the business connections that are made, there's a personal side of that.
Absolutely. More community questions, please. Oh,
Hi.
somebody has a mic, I'm sorry.
This is kind of a constellation of ideas, so I'll see if I can express it in an orderly manner. I've been thinking about access to information, and access to information has always been something that has been an issue in supporting equity. We often talk about access to education, but it's bigger than that, especially now. It's becoming exponential, and we're facing things like, do we need a digital a digital Bill of Rights? But also, should access to information become a human right? It's as important these days, I think, as being connected to the electrical grid or being connected to water in your community, because if you don't have that connection, you get left behind in so many ways. And so much of what we do is curious exploring and self-education, and that, to many of your points, is what gets us where we want to go, not just our normal high school education. And so my question in that context is, where does that sit in the Grand Rapids community? What are our opportunities to make sure that everybody of all ages and all genders and all colors and all ethnicities, to make sure that we're all connected, that we all have that human right of access to information?
My man Luis, it sounds like a question for you. I haven't heard from you in a while.
I think to get to the communities, we gotta reach out to the nonprofit organizations that are in the communities, because people go to the nonprofit organizations to get informed, to get help, and all those services are for free. So if we can get connections with nonprofit, we can span the voice and tell them what are we doing, how are we doing things, and where are things happening. Sometimes most of the events are not in their communities, and that's why they don't get the information, because most of the stuff is happening downtown. When Grandville is not knowing what's happening here, what's city hacks, they don't know about that. So if we can get in contact with them, and talk to them, see how can they be a voice for the events that is happening. I think that will be a good way to reach out to communities.
Yeah, and to that point, there's so many different indigenous organizations that are untapped resources. We always think that there's some kind of rocket science. Earlier today, we were on La Mayor Radio, and they've been a great partner for us when it comes to reaching out to the Latina, Latinx community. And of course, there is the, what is it, AJ, the Latina Network of West Michigan. There's the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. So there are these organizations that are historic and that are new, like the Loop Coding Center, that have been in existence. They fly under the radar of mainstream media, but they're willing to work, they're ready to work, they're already doing the work, and we just need to come together and make sure that we're sending our press releases that way, that we're also supporting these organizations, because they're the people who have the trust on the front lines with those communities that we want to work in first and foremost.
Hey, John, what about Smart Zone?
Smart Zone.
She spoke about access.
Well, if we talk about the Smart Zone, we got to forward that over to Mike Morin. But I want to, before we close out with something like that, if there's any other community questions, cuz.
Hi, I'm Kathleen Brynsma, and I'm going to do a shameless plug for Grand Rapids Community College because I'm a trustee at the college, and I'm really glad to see we have a student here, at least one student. Hi. The community college is being very intentional about a lot of the things that we're talking about here tonight, which just fills me with joy. They're intentional about connecting young people in our elementary and middle schools with careers they might like. We have Career Quest with the KCTC and a couple of other generous donors every year to expose kids to EMT, welding, electrical. That happens once a year, hands-on. Come and see all these other options you have. We're also intentional about being a place where you are with people who might be the first generation in their family to get post-secondary education. It's the third, and it's consistently the third and fourth most attended place for East Grand Rapids high school students. So we're breaking down that stigma, and my kids are going to help do that. I also want to talk about robotics programs in our elementary schools that's separate and distinct from the community college. I think that's another access point to coding and hands-on and seeing. And our state is very committed to robotics. The governor gives, I want to say, a stipend of $500 to $1,000, the same amount to every school that has a team. I think we have the most number of teams, robotics teams here in Michigan, in our state. And so these are all things that are sort of bubbling up, and I think it's really important that we hear about them from each other, and that's why this is such a great, but access to people who haven't seen coders, who don't have a coder in their family, who might not have gone to a four-year institution, is one of the things I think we're working on in our public schools here and at the community college.
Absolutely. Great comment. Thank you, Kathleen, for making us aware.
Is it on? Okay. Hi, I'm John Worsley. I'm a marketing consultant, and I got a twofold question. The first part of it goes back to the title of this talk, which is technology on the same historical course but faster than the furniture industry? Because what happened to the damn furniture industry is what happened to the auto industry. You know, all of y'all that are talking have been very successful for the last 10 years. You were talking about what techniques worked the last 10 years and why it didn't provide enough people or enough employees or enough stuff. My question is, what is it for the next 10 years? Because you know it's not going to be the same. And the other part of it is, I'm, as you can tell from my accent, a Southerner. And I can speak from historical experience in the South that people of color, black people, always been late. They were late to Chicago, late to Detroit, late to Flint, late to Philadelphia, late to DC, in trying to get jobs and provide for their families to take advantage of an industrial movement. Is it going to change so radically that people of color can't get in because there's less jobs going future? Example I'd like to give is in marketing. As you notice, all the big ad agencies just went bust for their sales because suddenly companies they were buying all this cross media, they were buying social, they were buying everything. There's PhDs and all this software for market attribution. They couldn't figure out what worked. Procter & Gamble arbitrarily dropped 20% of their advertising spending. They just cut it, and nothing happened to their sales. So now all these big agencies are looking at this technology and saying, we can't get it to work for whatever reason. So it's getting ready to, I think it's another bubble that's going to transform into something better. But my question is, historically, is it possible that you're all wrong in the next 10 years and that all these efforts to enhance technology means people are going to miss the boat when they go for it?
So we have to break that compound question down into about 3 parts. Because he waited until 7:45 to drop the atomic bomb on us, right? So so 8 o'clock, we're gonna get people. Carl, you're itching for it. So we'll let you address whatever portion of that you wanna address.
It is certain that we were wrong. And the only way that all of our companies will be around is if we continue to reinvent ourselves. When we started in 2001, we were building desktop software. And that soon went away and we were building web apps. And then that got eaten by mobile. And then we noticed that like embedded's an opportunity, and then it's become Internet of Things. Like it will change, absolutely. And so my hope is to reach our goal of being a 100-year-old tech company is just to be constantly evaluating and innovating. And I see that happening with my makers who are plugged into what's going on in technology. They're very sensitive to that, way better than I am at that. I push on the innovation side on process and business and customer needs, and we meet in the middle, and it works out really, really well. If we lose that, we'll start coasting downhill, for sure. Couldn't agree more.
Yeah, so I mean, what?
Let's give some context. AJ asked about the smartphone.
Okay.
He asked about African Americans being late to Harvard, whether it was the industrial boom, which brought African Americans from the South, to Detroit, Flint, to all these places where we're at now.
Yeah.
I think there's an opportunity to lead those two conversations together.
Yeah. You can try to pull it all together. I think you're going to come back to the pace of change is an issue, right? It's clearly accelerating, and I'm going to go back, Carl, to one of your earliest comments when you were talking about people that were writing code in the role of college and not necessarily understanding all the underlying underpinnings. I think it's very, very dangerous, and I'll go back. This can be some of the challenges in some of the technique type programs where people are learning how to do things but don't understand why they're doing them and don't really understand how the underlying stuff works. To learning how to learn. Whether you're in computer science or you're in English literature, or whatever that curiosity is that you're pursuing, it's just fodder, right, for learning how to learn, hopefully. And if that's the angle we pursue, then we can adapt. But I think the challenge is, back to the question is, if we look in the community where something starts out as something where really gets understood and then gets boiled down to just a trade or a job, and if that's all that ever transfers into the colored community or into any community that's a problem, okay? And I think that's the challenge. And coding is no different, because you guys are writing the AIs that are going to write the code that's going to replace your job. Right? You know that, right? So even this is what's happening. So I think that is the deal. So then we come back to your access to information and the smart zone. I think we need to have a really serious conversation as a community about what's infrastructure. Okay? We don't have anybody in this community that doesn't have a road in front of their house, right? And I think you could make an argument that internet connectivity is no different than having water to your house or a road or whatever that looks like and whatever that economic model is. Because as a community, I think that's absolutely essential, and everybody in this community should have access to all of that information. That's not how we've done it in the past, right? That's kind of a luxury, and some of us have fast internet, some of us have slow, some of us have none, some of us have computers, some of us don't. I think we need to solve that issue, because I think that's what ultimately solves your issue. But I absolutely agree with Carl that yes, we're all wrong. We just don't know how or why, and it won't be 10 years. It'll only take about 10 minutes for me to be wrong.
So I already said, disclaimer that I'm on one today. Just gonna put that out there. I would answer your question by kind of asking another question. How have you used your privilege to bring people into the fold? everyone in this room has privilege. If you're able to walk, guess what? You have privilege. If you have a car, you have privilege. If you are white, you have privilege. If you are a man, you have privilege. If you are a woman, you have privilege. Everyone in this room has privilege. So I would say it's not that people of color or black people missed the boat. I would say that this is a systemic problem, right? We're talking about institutionalization of this problem. You can call it institutionalized racism, you can call it just plain racism, right? But this is a problem that this country has been dealing with since Columbus landed on Plymouth Rock. So it's not that people missed the boat, it's how have people used or not used their privilege to bring people into the fold. And that's a bigger problem, right? That's a problem that, I don't know, we definitely can't solve it tonight, right? It's a work in progress. I don't know if something that is technology that can solve, but everyone has gotten somewhere today because someone helped them. Whether it's someone mentored, whether it's someone recommended you for a job, whether it's literally a manager saying, you know what, I want to hire this person, or hey, my son just graduated college, can he get an internship here, right? We can look around, especially in this community, and probably, well, maybe not count on one hand, but we can point out the people of color in leadership, the people of color in technology, the people of color, the women of color who are doing this, and we're gonna come up with the same people every single time. And we can look at this panel, right? Me and Luis, I think, are the only people of color. I don't want to make judgments, but because there's more than just skin color, right? Right? This is visible diversity. So why are we pulling on the same people in technology, right? We know that we have to build that pipeline. So it's not that people missed the boat. I'm saying, how did people not use their privilege to make sure that people got on the boat in the first place?
Aaron. Well, I want you to talk about design thinking a little bit, and then we'll have one more question from the audience, because I think that's a way that you are actually doing the work, right, in order to diversify the tech talent pipeline, also, you know, create an accessible path for people to get involved. And that's a course that kind of speaks to the thinking about what the next 10, 20, 30 years will look like, right? So,
it's for me?
It's for you, man.
Shoot. So the question was around design thinking, and I think just, well, I mean, at a high level of design thinking, I think it's nice because we can it's just a study of people, and it's observing the world around us and kind of responding to that in an empathetic way. And if we can do that through real dialogue, it's a way more valuable than quantitative data. So you can kind of solve real problems in a unique way, just kind of like you were saying. So I think any way that we can teach people to be better communicators, better collaborators, have more diversity in their thinking, just as a soft skill or power skill, depending on like your tone. I think those are just core elements that are really important beyond even just the hard skills. So I know tonight, in many cases, we talk about technology from a hard skill standpoint, but I think more importantly, soft skills are more so important. So those are things I think just, we need to stay focused on and not get lost, to your point, just by learning how to code, because it might not be coded anymore. But if we have good transferable skills and we do care about the people that we're solving problems for, and we are truly empathic around just what they're trying to do and what we're trying to do, and we can do that in relation, I think those things are important. So things like design thinking, it's not a silver bullet, but it's a pretty damn good try.
And we have things in the ecosystem for people to access. So feel free to ask these people, visit the websites, ask us, the Midwest Tech Project. That's the space that we're in about where to access these opportunities to education and get you ready. One last question. This gentleman right here up front. Yeah, just go ahead.
Okay. My name is Hugh Ingalls. I'm an entrepreneur here at Star Garden, and Amazon, we mentioned a couple things about Amazon, recently announced their second headquarters, and Grand Rapids was on the list of potential candidates, and the New York Times did an article breaking down each one of the cities and of the 8 criteria, and as soon as it hit tech talent, that's where Grand Rapids dropped off the list. So how do you respond to that? You know, as a region that could potentially use an employer such as that nature downtown, and about, where, the outside views Grand Rapids as far as tech talent.
Meredith, I think this is a good question because you're the biggest employer, I think, on this panel right now. Even though Spectrum Health is here, you're hiring people, so.
Probably not Spectrum, the largest employer in the region. I think it touches on the very first question that you asked about us as a tech hub, in my opinion. I think that our ability to classify things that we do digitally instead of technology, about thinking about how we think about what it means to be in technology matters. I think our ability to create an ecosystem where we can bring people in from outside of Grand Rapids to help, fill the funnel is also important. Excuse me. I was part of Talent 2020, and I was looking at some data recently about influx of population, and the data is good for West Michigan. It's better than other regions, but it's not great. 1% population growth in the tech industry. So we've got some work to do in order to be able to compete and attract an employer like that.
No? Carl, any thoughts?
Go ahead, man, you do this. That's okay. I'm not sure we want Amazon here. I'll just say it. 50,000 jobs is going to be economy distorting. And there are not too many places that you could plunk a 50,000 employer company down and not mess a lot of stuff up, frankly. So I'm not too disappointed if we don't get this dubious distinction.
Spoken like a true OG. And with that said, we're going to conclude this panel discussion. We appreciate, first and foremost, the community coming out. All of our wonderful, wonderful panelists. Obviously, we need to have part 2, 3, 4, 5, 1,000 sequels, like the Harry Potter edition of this panel discussion here. But we are so appreciative of you guys for your precious time, for helping to line some things up and to get us curious about the opportunities within West Michigan's tech ecosystem. And also, there are so many different things that we can be doing to engage in what's happening here in Grand Rapids. And so pick a company, pick an entity, pick Loop Coding Center. Let's support, let's find out what they have going on. Let's show up to more events. Let's spread the good word. But this is the kickoff to City Hacks GR, and we are so excited. Thank you, guys.
Today has been an amazing panel discussion at the title, Is Grand Rapids, Michigan Still the Furniture City or America's Next Tech Hub? This night would not be possible without our amazing sponsors, Star Garden, Atomic Object, Open Systems Technology, Fair State University, Mercantile Bank, Downtown Grand Rapids Inc., Spectrum Health, and Grand Rapids Public Schools. Please stay on the lookout for more Midwest Tech project updates and events. You can find us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube at The Midwest Tech Project. And also you can find us on our website at www.midwesttechproject.org. It has been a wonderful evening here at City Hacks kickoff of our panel discussion, and please stay tuned for the events to come. Thank you.